Since Valentine's Day is right around the corner, I thought I would show you how to make these super cute beaded heart earrings. It's a great project for a beginner because it's really easy and it shouldn't take you very much time at all. I am using Miyuki Delica beads today in a color called Luminous Wild Strawberry, which is such a gorgeous color. I'm also using a size 10 bead today as opposed to a size 11, which I normally use, so it's a slightly bigger bead. I have my ear wires ready to go. I have a size 12 beading needle. I have this pretty paperclip chain. I have pliers and I have wire cutters for attaching the findings. And I am using Fireline in a size 6 weight. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to use a black thread just so you can see it better, but I really recommend using white. To start, I'm going to cut a length of thread about an arm's length, and then I'm going to pick up 2 beads and slide them down towards the end of my thread, leaving about a 3 to 4 inch tail. And then I'm going to take my needle and come back up through the first bead, like so. When I pull that tight, it forces the 2 beads to sit next door to each other like this. Now I'm going to loop around these beads, come down through the second bead, and then up through the first bead again. Pull that tight, and then I'm going to come down through the second bead again, like so. And now it's time to add the bead, which will become the very bottom of the heart. So I pick up a bead, I come back up through the first bead, like so. It's going to make a little triangle, and I pull that, and there you go. That's the beginning of my little heart. Now please note that bottom bead will sit sideways rather than up and down like the others. Next, I've picked up 2 beads, and I'm going to slide my needle under the thread bridge, which is the thread that goes between the beads, just like so. So I have 2 beads, I'm sliding the needle under the thread bridge like that. Pull my thread through, make sure it's tight, and then I'm going to bring my needle up through the second bead I added. So let's take a look at that. We have our first little triangle, and then we've just set 2 beads on top of it, slightly offset because we're building a pyramid up. We're increasing as we go up. So I pick up another bead, and there's no thread bridge, so I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to slide it between the rows like that. So in between the first row and the second row is going to be my thread bridge in this case. And I pull the thread through and then come back up through that bead that I just added, like so. And then I pull that tight, and now you have this little pyramid. That bottom bead will look wonky for a little while, but we'll fix that in the end when we put our tail back in. So pick up 2 more beads. You're going to go under that first thread bridge, pull it through, and now I like to switch my work over so you're always working in the same direction, working away from your non-dominant hand. You're going to put your needle through the second bead there, bring it up, pull it snugly, and there you go. Now this row is going to have 4 beads because the last one had 3, and we're building up. So pick up another bead, slide it under the thread bridge, pull it through, and then come up through that same bead, like so. And now for the next bead, there's no thread bridge, so we pick up our bead, and we're going to go in between those 2 reeds, in between the first and, or the second and third row in this case. So right in there, you slide that through, and then you come back up through that bead that you just added. And there you go, 4 beads. So now in the next row, we're going to add 5 beads. So you pick up 2 beads, go through that first thread bridge, bring your needle back up through the second bead, like so. Pull that snugly. Then you pick up another bead, go through the next thread bridge, come back up through that bead that you just added, like so. Pick up another bead, go under the thread bridge, slide your thread through, back up through that bead, and then for the final bead, we have to bring it between the 2 rows because we don't have a thread bridge. So we're going to bring it between the 2 rows like that. And then bring your needle back up through that bead. Now, to create this heart, we need to keep building. When you get to 8 beads, that's when you're going to meet me back here and we start on the next part. But in the meantime, just continue building in that same way. So we picked up 2 beads, went through the first thread bridge, back up through that second bead, and then we pick up another bead. Hopefully you're getting good at this by now. Pick up another bead, up through it, pull that snugly. You see here I got my thread cut, so I had to pull it out. And now it should be looking like this. Under the next thread bridge. And then back up through that bead you just added. So I'm going to keep working on this. When I get to the row that is 8 beads wide, I am going to come back and show you the next steps. So you keep working on yours, and when your row is completed that has 8 beads in it, come back here and we will get started on the next part of this project. Okay, so here we are back here with our 8 bead row, and now we are going to start the top part of this heart. So I have 8 beads, I'm picking up 2 beads. I'm continuing to work the way we have been working, so I'm going to go underneath that first thread bridge, and then I come up through the second bead, just as we have been doing. The difference is this is just going to be a short row. We're going to do 4 beads and then we're going to work in the opposite direction. So I'm adding another bead. I'm going to come back up through that bead. And one more bead. Like so. And now we'll start to work in the opposite direction to make the top part of the heart. So we're going to pick up 2 beads, and instead of going under the first thread bridge, I'm going under the second thread bridge. We pull through. I'm going to turn my work around in my hand, And then I'm going to come up through the second bead, just as we have been doing. But this time when you pull your thread through, after I get it unhooked here, we're going to pull the thread through, and then you see that your first bead is just sitting a little wonky. So we need to go back through that bead, go down through the first bead, and then back up through the second bead. And when you do that, they will be sitting perfectly. And this is our first row of decreasing brick stitch. Pick up another bead, we come underneath the thread bridge, and then come back up through that bead. And now you have your row of 3. Next, we're going to add a row of 2. So we pick up 2 beads, come under that second thread bridge, pull the needle through, flip your work, come back up through the second bead, pull that tight, and then down through the first bead so it doesn't look wonky. And then back up through the second bead. Now doing your stitch in this way, what it does is it hides the threads. You'll see some tutorials where they don't take this extra step, but then you end up with an exposed thread on the outside of your bead, which you really don't want. So now I need to work my thread back down so I can build the other side. I want to come out that bead on the other side, which is 4 beads from the other side. So I'm going to work my thread back down through the beads one at a time until I could find the path to get me back to that exit bead, which is 4 beads in from the outside of the other side of the heart. So I'm coming down, I'm looking for a good path. To be honest, I didn't pick the best path. It takes me a while to get there. It's sometimes hard to see where I'm going and look through the camera at the same time. So I'm coming down and I'm turning my work so I can work back up. And that bead is not going to quite get me there. So I'm going to go back down and then back up to get to the bead I want to be in. Just work slowly, go 1 bead at a time when you're starting. There you go, now I'm finally where I need to be. So pull my thread through, and then I'm going to begin building another row. So I pick up 2 beads, come under that second thread bridge, come back up through the second bead, and then down through the first bead, and back up through the second bead again. And then I pick up another bead, you should definitely have the hang of this by now. Hopefully you are a brick stitch pro at this point. Now here you see I need to add a bead because you see I want it to go out to the edge like the other side. So I'm going to do 1 stitch of increasing brick stitch here. So I'm adding it on the edge there by going in between the 2 rows, going up. And now the rest of this will be the decreasing brick stitch. So I'll do a row of 3 and then a row of 2. So I'm picking up 2 beads, going through the second thread bridge, coming back up through that second bead, and down through the first. And then back up through the second, which will have the beads sitting exactly where they're meant to be. And finally, one more bead in this row. After this, we just have 2 more beads and we're done with this heart. And the next section, we are going to add the chain. Please feel free to use whatever kind of chain you have. It doesn't have to be the paperclip chain that I have. We're just going to finish out this top part, and I will meet you back here when you're all complete with that row, and we will add the chain. Okay, so here we are with our finished heart, and now we are going to add our chain. So I pick up the chain and I take my needle through the little loop at the bottom, pull that down to my beadwork, and I'm going to take my needle and go back down through the bead, which is the neighbor to the bead my thread is coming out of. So I pull that through, and then I'm going to bring my needle back up through the neighbor bead and through the loop in the chain, pull it through. Try not to get my tail tangled up. I pull that through, and now I'm going to bring my needle back down through the neighbor bead and into the beadwork. So now I am going to work the thread down into the beads, and I'm going to finish it off. So I'm going to go down a couple of rows and find a good place to secure this thread. I secure the thread by looping it around 2 neighbor beads. In this case, I want to go down a couple of rows and get into that main part of the beadwork. If you ever have trouble getting through a bead, like it feels tight, then choose a different bead, because the beads are made out of glass and they will break and it will be heartbreaking. So here you see, I found a neighbor bead, I went down through one, and then I came up through the bead next to it. Now I'm going to go down through the first bead again, and then up through the bead next to it. This creates tension in your thread and it keeps it from coming undone. So I do that at least 2 times, and then I take the needle back down through my beadwork a little bit, and then I'll clip it off. See, I was having trouble getting through that bead, so I skipped it and went through another one. Okay, and now I am just going to clip this thread. I'm using wire cutters to clip my thread because I find it easier with the fire line to use wire cutters rather than scissors. And now with this little tail from where we started, I just need to thread that onto my needle and then work that thread back up into the work in the same way, finding 2 neighbor beads where we can loop around and create some tension so that doesn't come unraveled. Also, when we go through this bottom bead, like I said before, that's when it's going to straighten out that wobbly bottom bead. So now that we're coming back through there, it gets into position where it's supposed to be. And I'm just going to work this thread up and find a place to create my tension between 2 beads. And here, because I came down on the one side, you just want to try to avoid beads you've already brought your thread through a bunch of times, because it does start to get crowded inside of that bead, and that's when you risk the potential breaking of your beads. So I'm just going to finish that up here, and then I can clip that thread, And then meet me back here and we will add our ear wire. And we're almost done. You're doing such a great job. See you in a second. So you did it. You have a beaded heart attached to a chain now. Now you need to decide how long you want your chain to be, count the number of links, and then use your wire cutters to clip the next link, like so. Just pinch that, shake off the half link, and then we are going to grab our ear wire, open that up with our pliers, add the chain to that open ear wire like so. Close the ear wire back. Sorry for the really bad camera work here. I just need to see a bit closer. But here you have it. Your earring is complete. I hope you really enjoyed this project. I think it's really cute. My 13-year-old immediately stole these earrings from me, so I'm going to have to make myself another pair. Enjoy the project. Bye.